Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be joined with the hilarious Jamie Kilstein.
Jamie Kilstein.
Comedian of the Jamie Kilstein podcast, former SJW, now critic of SJW culture. So my first question, Jamie, is what the hell is SJW? Because this is a confusing term for a lot of people, actually.
Okay, and I don't even know if I'm critical. Dude, I go so back and forth because that's like the easy narrative, right? Like after I went on Rogan, there was some dumb article that was like Jamie Kilstein brands as anti-feminist. It's like, no, I don't like hate women. I don't, I'm still very liberal. I mean, fuck, the first time I was called, this sounds like it's a bit, it is not. The first time, I swear to God, I was called a social justice warrior on like Twitter. I thought it was a compliment.
Well,
like,
it sounds like one. It does.
Yes,
social
totally.
justice, fighting for social justice, you know, that sure sounds like a positive thing.
It sounds wonderful. Yeah. I swear to God, I literally remember it where some guy was like, "You're a fucking social justice warrior." And in my self-righteous head, I was like, "Thank you." Like I am fighting the good fight. And I think there's a difference, right? Because for me, it's all about intentions. So I'm still very liberal. I still want to defend the underclass, right? If I see someone being fucking bullied, I'm going to step in, whatever. But I think online, especially on social media, people are just trying to either act the most offended or the most virtuous. And a lot of times they're not doing anything to help the cause they're talking about. They're just yelling at people, because that's what I was doing. I had a miserable life in Brooklyn, and I would tweet about whatever the trending topic was, and then I wouldn't go out and then march with Black Lives Matter. I would refresh my dumb joke to see if like a celebrity retweeted it or if I got new followers, because that's how I got my validation.
Yeah, I think that's obviously that's a really common thing. And I just want to just so in case anyone's not familiar, SJW is a term from the right used to, as an insult to political activists on the left, but it's more specifically used for people who take things a little too far. Well,
what's funny is when the right uses it, like when the hard right uses it, I'm like, you guys are fucking idiots. I still think that, because to attack people, again, if the intentions are right, to attack people for like defending, like the Chick-fil-A thing that happened this week. That's like a great example, right? People were so outraged when Chick-fil-A was like, we're going to stop donating to these homophobic places. And the right was suddenly like, we're going to boycott Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, you motherfuckers made it sound like we were these self-righteous snowflakes who didn't want to eat at Chick-fil-A. Now you're literally saying you will only eat at a fast food place if they hate gay people. That's insane. So like when they use it in that derogatory term, I never want to make, especially a young person, feel bad for being idealistic or for wanting to march or for wanting to join a political campaign or whatever. There is, however, a certain group of people on the left who it's not about helping people. It's about finding out who slipped up, who made a bad joke, who we can cancel that week, and then using that cancellation to temporarily feel better about our own shitty wasteland of a life.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that example up, because what makes SJWs, and we really should come up with a better term.
Dude, yeah, I know.
SJ us not use, maybe? I don't know.
Cunts. We can do that. Just kidding. Don't cancel me.
No, that works. There are cunts, there are dicks on all sides of 100%. Any political debate. And so some other examples that come to my mind are the whole allegations of anti-Semitism. Like that comes primarily from the right these days.
Yes.
Ilhan Omar's anti-Semitic because she criticized Israel. That's doing the same thing. You are taking something that is not hateful and you're blowing it insanely out of proportion to paint somebody as prejudiced to an entire ethnicity of people.
Yeah, and I mean, you know what's interesting? Like, for me, as someone who hates Jews, I'm just kidding, as a Jew, for me, it's when the right correctly says that when the left calls everyone who voted for Trump a Nazi, and they say, hey, if everyone's a Nazi, then no one's a Nazi, right? In the same way, they kind of do that with Israel, right? Any criticism of Israel means you're an anti-Semite. Yeah. So it's taking these two very big, powerful statements, right? Nazi, anti-Semite, whatever. And it's stripping it of all meaning. So for me, again, like if we make the theme of this interview, it's all about intention. I would say to my conservative friends, my friends who are concerned about anti-Semitism, that if you start to conflate valid criticism of a nation with hatred of a people, then it's going to hurt you when you need to call out actual anti-Semitism. So, for example, a lot of the people who say you're anti-Semitic if you call out Netanyahu or if you call out Israel are the same people who voted for Trump. And Trump, since the Trump election, we have seen a resurgence in actual anti-Semitism, like on American streets. So the same people who are saying you're anti-Semitic if you criticize Israel are also the same people that helped usher in someone who has legitimate anti-Semitic friends or fans. So, it would be the exact same. And there are a lot of liberals who say criticism of Israel means you're anti-Semitic. And to them, I would say, look, anytime someone on the right says if you criticize America, you hate America, do you buy that? No, of course not. As a Jew, as someone who doesn't want fucking anti-Semitism, I almost see it as more of a responsibility to call out Israel because I don't want my people to look like a bunch of fucking animals who are murdering Palestinian children. I am more offended as a Jew when I see a fucking dead Palestinian kid and am told that because of like my bloodline or whatever, I have to blindly defend Israel. I think that's bullshit. And I think that if every Jew could call out the bullshit about Israel, get Netanyahu out of there, work to make Israel a peaceful state, that's better for the Jewish people in general. Yes. And you also hit on the fact that, there are Nazis, there are, on the other side, there are extremist jihadists. I mean, and so calling out hatred is okay because there are some bad, but so the problem with call out culture is not calling out things that are wrong. I think that's normal. I think a healthy society does call out things that are wrong because you want to discourage bad behavior. But the problem is when you're going too far and you're equating, you're making terrible equations. I mean, what concerns me the most too is that I honestly think people don't actually care. And I think that they log onto Twitter like I did and they just figure out what side because look, the right. So something the left doesn't do that great is we don't call out a lot of Islamic extremism because we see that there's so much Islamophobia on the right that we go, well, maybe we'll be quiet about that. But it's our responsibility again to be like, hey, don't be Islamophobic, and then we will call out the people who are actually fucking terrorists or jihadists or whatever. It's the exact same thing that the right, every time there's a terrorist attack, not a white person terrorist attack, so there haven't been many Islamic terrorist attacks recently in America, but anytime there was an Islamic terrorist attack, everyone on the right goes, well, the moderate Islam is responsible for denouncing it. They have to denounce radical Islam. They have to denounce extremism. But then why, if fucking Bernie Sanders, the next time Israel attacked Palestine or civilians were killed, if he was like, Jews have to denounce, I mean, not Bernie because he is Jewish, let's say fucking Tulsi said that, Tulsi was like, Jews have to denounce Israel, oh my God, she would be fucking arrested. They would go crazy. So my problem is, again, these double standards where I think you're trying to do this. What I try to do on the podcast is, you have to have principles, not teams, which means if you were mad that George Bush droned people, you need to call out Obama when he drones people. If you were mad that Clinton was creepy with women, you have to call out Trump when he's creepy with women. The problem is we're so fucking tribalized and hypocrites that we only call out people when it fits our political narrative.
Mm-hmm. Can we, because you've said a couple times, like, I used to do, I did this. And so can you just kind of specifically tell us your story? I was introduced to you recently when you appeared on The Hill. And yes. I identified with it very much because.
Don't say that. You don't want to say that.
Yeah. well, because I don't know how much you know, but I lost a job recently because of an over 10-year-old video that featured MLK, and it was offensive to some people. That's it. So I lost a job because of offensive comedy.
Sure.
That was over 10 years ago. And I don't think there's, I don't want to blow my thing out of proportion because I guess, hey, an employer can, they don't have to hire anybody, but yeah, but my concern is just things getting blown out of proportion and without, and just like, not just out of proportion, but just fucking immediately. There's no thought at all. People panic, and I panicked too. And I'm like, I'm sorry. And then I actually looked back and I'm like, that's after I apologized. I'm like, that's not like I hadn't looked at it in 10 years, Jamie. And then I look back and I'm not proud of it. But I was like,
it's not going on the reel or anything.
Yeah, but I was looking at it, I'm like, is that really? Is it so horrible? Is that so terrible?
The thing that, one, I gotta say, just like man to man, like you're handling it perfectly, because I've talked to some people who have been quote unquote canceled, and the people who are going to survive it are the ones that aren't bitter. I talked to this one guy who I have no idea if he was falsely accused or whatever, but of like sex stuff, not of anything crazy, but of like, sex stuff.
Well, hold on. You should clarify, because sex stuff, I'm assuming you don't mean physical sex stuff. You just mean like, a misinterpreted, like
hitting on someone.
Yeah. Which is huge, which is incredibly different. And I've been really disturbed. When I hear about, I looked into your, past situation, and I don't want to make this the focus of it, but I think it's important to talk about, because it's kind of like what, it gave you a whole new perspective. And the thing is, and what I noticed in that whole situation was a lot of people using the terminology predator, abuse, but it wasn't what people think of as predator, sexual predator. It was just,
of course not.
Yeah, it was people just like, it misinterpreted texts, maybe.
No, like, not even that.
Not even? Yeah, you want to clarify? Yeah, and also another, before, so you clarify the whole predator thing, because I know you got to, it must be frustrating as hell to you, but also the whole, like, so when I see like abuse in the headline, and then what is it? It's like, like someone thought, considered it emotional abuse or whatever, which to me is, but when you have two adults in a consensual relationship, and there are some texts exchanged that might be considered mean or something like that. Is that abuse? That's not abuse. I don't think that's abuse. Like,
no, look, it's hard to. It's been interesting trying to talk about this publicly, because the thing that is sort of what's ruined, like what ruined me for a bit, was also sort of my saving grace, where you read the headlines, and the headlines make it sound like I'm a fucking sex predator. And I lost gigs last week because sexual misconduct. My poor fucking girlfriend's parents saw that, and it's like, that looks like I was accused of like grabbing a woman or like, fucking raping a drug. Like it when I hear the word sexual misconduct, I think of like someone I'm going to get into a fist fight with. I think of like someone who like abused a fucking woman, grabbed a woman against her consent, whatever. Use their power to, threaten a woman, whatever. And talking about it's been tough because what I can say, and one of my two sort of go-to lines, and I said this on Rogan's, are one, I don't want to play the victim in the sense that I've had a lot of guys, a lot of right-wing groups reach out and they kind of like, look, I would have made a ton of money if I was like former feminist who is now like a men's rights guy. And I don't want to do that, right? If you read the article itself, like you did, most of that I can tell you isn't even fucking true. But if you actually read it, you still go, there's no evidence. Crime. Yeah, well, it was consensual one night stands. Not even that. I mean, the big one at the end was how the girl who was like, when we were together, he treated me right, or like it was the first time I was treated well by a man or something. And then she was like, but then he called me a road fuck on his podcast. And then Jezebel in parentheses said Jezebel could not find the quote. And it's like,
isn't that incredible?
I'm not talking about road pussy on my feminist podcast that I hosted with my ex-wife. Yeah. Like, that's an insane thing. But even if I did say that,
they printed it even though they said they couldn't verify it.
I know. But even if
And again, just like so you verified that what this girl accuser said is not true, and you're still putting in everything she says. Anyways,
yeah. No, and so what I was gonna say is like, so a lot of that shit's not true. Even the stuff that they did print is still like not anything. What really fucks me is the headlines and what costs.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. And this, I have the same. I mean, I worry about the same thing, even though it is different. I know it's not as serious an accusation, but still, I have people saying that I make racist videos. Which anyway, go ahead.
Right. And that's obviously like, that's fucking terrible that you have to go through that. And what I was going to say is, I've never wanted to paint myself as the victim, which is why it's hard to talk about this, because it's like you have to defend yourself, but you also don't want to be like, bitches be lying. But I will say that the people who have reached out to me the most, including the day after it happened, have been women. And a lot of them have been women who have been sexually assaulted, who have been in abusive relationships. And they're like, this shit pisses me off to no end, because there are plenty of women who are still legitimately suffering. And when you conflate a consensual one night stand with predatory behavior, when you conflate an argument, or not even an argument, like a breakup with emotional abuse, where it's like, I'm not legally bound to stay in a relationship. That's not emotional abuse. That's me getting away from someone.
Or not responding to a text. Like, that's like,
right.
How can you turn that into abuse?
That's not emotional abuse.
Okay, maybe you can call that passive aggressive. That's not abuse.
No, you can call
and that's normal in a failing relationship. That's normal. I mean, that's
yes. And what I always make sure to say is, because now you have a lot of guys pushing back and they're like, we're the victims. It's like, look, there are still more women who don't have justice for their sexual assault, for their abusive relationships, than there are men who are falsely accused. However, what I've learned and what I will say now is, when you falsely accuse someone, or when you have those conflations, you're making it worse for men and women, because we saw after the Aziz story, suddenly a lot of these Me Too stories were like kind of ignored, and people were like, oh, it's like that Aziz, because the Aziz thing was so ridiculous compared to like a Harvey Weinstein, that people are going to just start taking a lot of these really serious accusations less seriously. And so the key, what I was going to say with you, is not being bitter is the key, man, because I can't have people around me who are like, these fucking lying bitches. I'm like, I'm not your audience. I don't want a part of that. Like, you have to be like, what could I have done better? That video was dumb. I should have fucking gotten out of my long-term relationship. I was 100% an idiot having one night stands, and, probably like should have texted people back or whatever, but I was dumb and selfish and depressed and just being a fucking idiot in his 20s who was like sleeping around. So you try to learn from it, but then you just have to move on. So to your biggest point, and by the way, it's been hard, like the amount of shame. When I got those gigs canceled to me last week, I live with a fucking amazing girl. We're doing the podcast. The comedy's starting to take off again. All it took were those one gigs canceled, and I'm crying to my girlfriend again, feeling like I'm that piece of shit, who got canceled however many years ago. To your actual political point and away from me, the thing that bums me out the most is like the left used to be the party of redemption. Like, we are for prison reform because we want people to have second chances. So why are we also the people who are so like bloodthirsty to cancel everyone when like because look, I talk to Republicans and they're like, so you want murderers to go out of jail, but like want Louis C.K. to like never work again? And it's like, that's kind of a weird place that we put ourselves in.
Yeah, it is weird. Sorry.
Your days not rooting for people to become better people.
Well,
you don't actually care about the issue. You're just trying to get someone in trouble because you're a fucking narc who likes gossip.
That's it. And another thing is just selling sensational headlines get clicks. It's also a clickbait thing. That's where it begins. But then the responsibility, comes on us as like, consumers or readers. Like, where it's not right to just spread the sensational headline without reading the article and seeing like, is this really valid? Should we really be ruining somebody's, smearing somebody's livelihood with this?
And I mean, dude, that fucking article that has that print that you talked about saying like this probably isn't true, like that's still on page 1 of my fucking Google. That's still is enough justification for Wikipedia to like include that shit. But back to the not about me stuff. If we as people, as a society on the right and the left, if we're just trying to find people fucking up or find the bad joke from 10 years ago or whatever, like that's not to sound like I just came off a mushroom trip, but like that's gonna damage our collective psyche if we are only looking to tear people down. And especially what we love doing is people who do good, right? So I don't know if this is what triggered it for you, but you had this fucking beautiful video go viral. And does that mean someone was like, I'm going to fucking look at this guy succeeding. I'm going to find where he fucked up. And, for me, when you said sensational headline, what was my fault is I was this self-righteous asshole. And my old podcast used to call people out. So, if I was just a comedian on stage talking about dating, there wouldn't have been an article written about me. Yeah. That's not a headline.
It wouldn't have spread
been,
like, yeah.
No, it would have been comedian does thing that comedians talk about on stage. It was the fact that they could go male feminist. And it was the guy who was saying believe all women who suddenly when it's written about them can't be like, oh, excuse me, don't believe those women. Those ones, believe all women but that lady. You know what I mean? Like you can't fucking do that. So that's why it was like a funny, haha, fuck this guy. But if I wasn't that's something else I learned because like I remember I did Bert Kreischer's podcast and he's like, dude, I envy you. You're in such a great spot. You're in this rebirth spot. And I was like, yeah, but like because I'm not the things that they said, how can I actually change? I can't stop sexually, emotionally abusing women because I don't do that. But then I started seeing all these little things. It's like, no, I can actually listen to other people. I don't have to start fights with strangers online. I can have the balls to get out of a fucking relationship, even though I don't want to hurt this girl, instead of just staying in it and making it worse. Like there were all of these ways. There are always ways that we can learn from these fucking shitty things that happen to us. Unfortunately, it's just not the things. I mean, fortunately, I guess it's not the things that the headlines, said about me.
Mm-hmm. Can I so just one of the more upvoted responses. So when I announced, I was excited to speak with you. And,
oh God!
And but see, I'm only bringing this up just to show how ridiculous it is, because it really is transparently ridiculous. So it was, don't interview Kilstein. He's a total scumbag with a history of sexual harassment. I'm like, and my response was like, do you have any actual like evidence of like what are you referring to, like specifically, not just copy and pasted headlines? And
right.
And then he also goes on. Oh yeah, he doesn't deserve to be on a platform, especially not a left-wing one. I'm like, well, he was just recently on the Hill. I really respect Crystal Ball. And but this is the most disturbing one, I think, even because, well, they're all disturbing. But he goes, the guy was a featured guest on a fucking Quillette podcast. The magazine trying to make fascism intellectual. It's like Yeah.
That was, by the way, that was their pitch to me. They're like, hey, if you want to come on the podcast, we're trying to make fascism intellectual. And I was like, you know what? As long as we're trying to make fascism intellectual and there'll be at least several women that I can sexually harass, I'm all in.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, first of all, so I'm not that familiar with Quillette, but I had stumbled upon them once before when I was researching the truth about a right-wing conspiracy about Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And I stumbled upon a great piece that just very methodically, comprehensively debunked this bullshit theory about Bernie Sanders wanting America to become just like Venezuela. I mean, it just debunked it perfectly. And they're saying that this outlet that is debunking right-wing conspiracy theories, right-wing lies about Bernie Sanders is promoting Nazis. And I did some other searches. You know, I hadn't heard this. I did some. No, there are no fucking articles promoting Richard Spencer on Quillette. Like, this is right. It's a ridiculous accusation.
Well, and also just like that whole comment thread was such a perfect microcosm of the internet, where it's like, don't have Kilstein on. He's a sexual predator. And you go, give me evidence. And then he's like, he wrote for Quillette. And it's like, you're just going down different talking points that aren't true. Yeah. And also, like, when you're saying that, like, most of all, like, he wrote for Quillette, like, so wait, that's worse than if I was sexually. I thought we were talking about me, like, being a creep to women, not me writing for, like, which one is it? And that's the problem with the online left right now, is like, I've had better conversations with fucking Glenn Beck and Quillette. And I've had them go, oh shit, I never thought of it that way, or seen my point.
That's big, actually. That's huge.
Let me see. Yeah, I mean, dude, I talked to Glenn Beck, and he was like, if you tried to be the former lefty gone right, he's like, I wouldn't have wanted to talk to you. So I got to talk about police shootings. I got to talk, like, I get to go on these right wing shows and talk about liberal shit. And like, look, would I have done that if they weren't my only option for a while? No, like, I would have agreed with that guy. I would have been like, fuck him. He went on, you know, he wrote for Quillette or whatever. But it's been fascinating having them be like, dude, you like, talk about your stuff. I mean, I had a table of NRA members be like, yeah, we have to do something about white supremacy on television. Like, that's a big fucking deal. And that's what I'm saying, where, like, if you just want to silence people or get mad at Bernie Sanders for going on Fox, you don't actually care about convincing other people about your platform. You care about being the fucking cool kid who's like, you have your pseudo intellectual line about how Quillette is intellectual fascism, and you have nothing to back it up. You're a fucking cliff note.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought of that example actually of because, you know, there was like a little bit of backlash against the Bernie Sanders campaign just for letting me go so quickly. But I have to, you know, again, like, I don't want to blow things out of proportion. I'm disappointed. I think it was, you know, a rushed decision. But I know, like, hey, the Bernie Sanders camp, they're going after fucking Wall Street, big insurance, big pharma. Matt Orfalea ain't that big a deal. Like, it's totally understandable. They're doing great stuff. And then also, it's like, hold on, people. Remember, like, Bernie Sanders, he's not that kind of harmful SJW type. He's absolutely not. And like you said, he went on Fox News when everyone was, when so many people were saying, don't go on Fox News. They're fucking evil. They're fucking corporate evil because they pander to their audience, just like MSNBC and every other corporate news station.
Right. And it's like, what is your actual goal? To me, when I talk to conservatives, I want to show them that they're being fucked over by the same people we're being fucked over. People like that in the comment section just want to show that they're right. You know, they're like the fucking 19-year-old who just learned about, like, Taoism or read David Foster Wallace and doesn't really understand it, but is telling everyone to read it. It's like, they're that person. They're that guy. And I've been that guy. I know what it's like to be that guy. But what you want to do is you want to have conversations with people you disagree with fucking compassion. I'm not going to have a compassionate conversation with a fucking Nazi, but if I have a chance to get in front of, you know, hundreds of thousands of conservatives, like, fuck yes, I'm going to do it. Now, if I wrote for Quillette And my article for Quillette was why we should use trans people to build a wall you know what I mean? Like if it was like some hateful, abusive shit, or if I went on Glenn Beck's show and I was like, lock her up, then it's like, now I'm a piece of shit. Now I'm a fucking sellout. If I start completely changing my views in order to sell myself, which by the way, motherfuckers, I would have been rich if I did that. The path I'm choosing right now is fucking stupid. But it's how I feel. So if I instead go on these conservative channels and I'm like, hey, like you don't want to be fucking taken advantage of by these Republicans and liberals in Washington, right? And they go, no. And I go, you don't want your kid to die in a war if it's not actually protecting enough, if it's unnecessary. And they go, no. Yeah. You know, like they and the hosts of Rising, you know, Crystal and Sagar say this all the time, where they're like, we agree on the problem, we just have different solutions. Well, that's a really good starting point. Yes. And you will find middle ground with people. And by the way, all of this, you're not welcome. This is the cool kids club. If you talk to one outlet I disagree with, you're out of the left. That's how fucking Donald Trump won. Yeah, you will never convince anybody anything. If you're like, oh, you think white lives matter, you're a fucking Nazi. Yeah. if you start by saying, you know, of course white lives matter, but black lives matters too, and this is why it's, you know, the priority. Right. This is why you need to support the movement, you know. And I know you're not a racist, like that. You're going to get a lot more. Yeah, dude. Progress. I mean, you're going to make a lot more progress. All you have to do is just like you said. You have to go. Of course. Like that's the move. Of course. Like white lives matter, but also these people have been systematically oppressed for a long. That doesn't mean that there aren't poor white people. That doesn't mean. I mean, and that's the problem. And when people say the extreme left is as bad as the extreme right, policy-wise, they couldn't be farther from the truth. You know, Bernie Sanders doesn't want to bomb Iran to steal their health care. You know, like we rarely see the kind of violence on the left that we see. Like, I'm sorry, you can't compare fucking Antifa with all the white supremacy we're seeing, right? It's just numbers wise doesn't add up. Do they do fucked up things that I disagree with? 1,000%. But it's not the same. You can't make that same comparison. I think when people say the extreme left is the same as the extreme right, they just mean when it comes to rhetoric, when it just is assholes on Twitter who refuse to listen to the other side. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is, man, is like, I, you know, walked away from social media for a while. I just like taught jujitsu and MMA for 3 years. I met a lot of people who liked me from Rogan, who didn't like me from Rogan. Now I'm back. I've done a bunch of headlining stand-up things. I have a new podcast. You know how many people have actually said horrible shit to me in real life? None. Zero. Even people will be like, hey, I disagreed with you, but like that was fucked up. What happened? Blah, blah, blah. Because Twitter is garbage and YouTube comments are garbage. And in real life, I would like to think that the majority of people on the left and right are decent and can have normal conversations. But online, man, we just feel like it's a fucking war all the time. And like, we can't hear anyone we disagree with, or we're gonna, you know, like it's just, it's fucking childish. Yeah. Now let me try to challenge you a little bit and push back a little bit. All right. Yeah, please. Okay. It's just kind of a funny story. I mean, like, so I agree with everything you're saying. And then, I checked out the podcasts you had on YouTube. I'm a YouTube guy, not a pack, so I watched all the YouTube ones. And then and then here's the thing. Then I get to the one with David Frum. Yeah. And so I'm like, hold on, because I really feel like I said earlier, ostracizing people, it serves a purpose. And when it comes to war criminals, or in David Frum's case, he was the speechwriter for George W. Bush, who took us to an illegal war in Iraq. He is partly responsible for spreading lies, for lying us into the Iraq war. And you know, so I had this, you know, I'm like, is he going too far with this? Anyway, so what are your thoughts? Well, so I had that too. That was the only interview I've done that I was torn with. And people were like, but you're going to have Noam Chomsky on. It's like, right, but Noam Chomsky he didn't have his hand in policy, right? And
well, he also didn't support the Iraq War. I don't understand what
when people would say like the extreme left and the extreme right, like Chomsky's like the extreme, and I'm like, what I'm saying is that's not valid. The reason that I wanted to have him on is because I have literally called him a war criminal. I have shouted about him having blood on his hands. He had blocked me on Twitter. I spoke at an event in Toronto that he was at. And in that event, in the speech I gave, I had at least 3 references to the war in Iraq. I had one line about Hillary Clinton where I was talking about how people who say if you don't support Hillary Clinton, you're not a feminist. And I was like, Hillary Clinton supported the war in Iraq, which killed thousands of women. First rule of feminism, don't kill all the women, right? So like, it's not exactly a soft joke. It's about the murders that we committed in America. So I see David Frum. And this is at the point where no one on the left is talking to me. And it's just these kind of like Quilletti centrist, like Jordan Peterson types. And David Frum is there. And I got really grossed out by myself because there was a part of me that goes, I should take those fucking Iraq jokes out. And then I was like, oh, that would make me the person that I'm against. So I'm like, fuck David Frum. I'm going to do these. I'm going to keep it the way it is. And I fucking hit the Iraq jokes. They do great. A couple people, I see people like looking over at him. Fine. And then I talked to the guy, one of the guys who organized it. And he was like, yeah, David Frum actually really liked you. And I was like, I've never had the chance to talk to someone that high in power, who was responsible for something that I fucking despised. And so, look, if I started that interview by being like, you have fucking blood on your hands, he would have hung up. And so, you know, if you heard the whole interview, I asked him about the Iraq war, and I asked it purposefully in the most empathetic way I could, because I just felt like if I'm going to consider myself any kind of journalist type person, I want to hear, because on the right, they're just going to kiss his ass and just ask him about Trump. And then on the left, they might go too hard. So I wanted just to be like, I don't know, man, does it keep you up at night? Like, do you still think about it? And he said it did. And he said it does. And that to me, like, there's nothing we can do. It fucking happened, right? But I got so many conservative listeners after that who wrote into me, and they were like, I never would have given your fucking show a chance. We have a guy who's given like $50 a month on the Patreon who found us after that episode. And he was like, I don't agree with anything you say, but I don't want you to change your mind. This isn't a bribe. I just want to hear people giving the other side. And like, to me, that's really fucking important. Nothing some dumb comedian is going to say is going to make David Frum like publicly renounce the Iraq war. You know, like when I asked him about, because he said what he thinks about the most is all the American civilians who died. And I asked him, what about the, you know, hundreds of thousands of Iraqis? And, you know, his talking point is that that was the Civil War and that would happen anyway. And like, I don't agree on that. But to hear him actually publicly mourn about a decision and these lives lost, I don't know, man. I mean, to me, it's like, we're not going to reverse it. So if somebody can, not that I'm the person, but if someone can break through and compassionately get that guy to change his mind and be like, yeah, I fucked up. It's like, look, if I had him on and did a total ambush thing, would have gone viral.
Like, yeah, it's true. Yeah.
I'm not doing, you know, people are like, he's a grifter now because he goes on right-wing shows. I'm like, no, dude. When I was sleeping on a couch, I got the book deal offer to write that former SJW thing. The path I'm taking, like I said, is fucking dumb. It's not sexy right now under Trump to have nuanced conversations or make fun of both sides. Just like when Obama was popular, I fucking got kicked off Conan for talking about drone strikes. I've never made the politically, you know, I wish I was smart enough to sell out. What would have gone viral is if I tricked Frum and then was just like, you have fucking blood on your hands every time you an Iraqi baby. You know, but if you were like, you know, I just want to be respectful. I promise I'll keep it cordial. And then you totally, dude, like that would have been fucking huge. That would have gotten me back in the left's fucking good graces. Now, look, am I going to do that again? No. Mm-hmm. You know, like, am I going to talk to a fucking Steve Bannon? Or like, there are people who used to be on the left who have gone that route. And it's like, now I'm going to interview. But From's really interesting because, like, the way he talks about Trump now, I don't know. To me, it was just really interesting. I mean, to be honest, man, my dream is just to be able to talk to fucking cool, funny people, or the shows I like the most are the ones I talk about mental health, or like I'm starting some big jujitsu podcast in 2 weeks. Like, cool. There's part of me that wants to piece out of politics after I make this comedy special. But I don't know, just the opportunity was there. And I think I would have felt more like a coward if I didn't do it. Yeah. But yeah, that's not going to be like my fucking move, where I'm not going to be like the kind of lefty who interviews like Republican monsters, you know?
Yeah. I mean, people cannot criticize you for doing this for money. Cause like you said, you know, having a cordial conversation with David Frum you're obviously not doing that for the money.
Yeah. We had a huge member leave our Patreon yesterday, and my girlfriend and I'm like, our first reaction is like, well, I guess we're going to fucking die. Like, things like, you know, next year I'm going to start headlining again and doing stand up and shit like that's fucking great. But yeah, man, it's been much harder. And I'm not even playing the centrist route. I mean, there was part of me that thought that was going to be it. I'm like, I guess I'm like the centrist guy, but it's like, I'm not. I'm still more fucking liberal than the majority of like, quote unquote, like Democrats.
Well, let me say just a couple things. So like, I honestly did learn a little bit. I was surprised. I don't know much about David Frum other than, like, you know, how the horrible shit he did to get us in the Iraq War, you know, writing speeches for Bush, and also he has said some really dumb shit on CNN before, but I did learn that he was actually, it sounded like he was somewhat supportive of the Affordable Care Act. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
So that was kind of shocking, because it kind of shows. I'm still on the fence. I admit, like, with,
he got fired. Yes, he got fired from the fucking American Enterprise Institute.
That's true. He got fired from a right-wing think tank.
I didn't know that either.
Saying for basically criticizing Republicans on their out-of-touch stance on healthcare.
Correct.
So Correct. that was interesting, and I never would have known that if I had just been fucking Jamie. He interviewed from fuck that fucking
right. And by the way, like, my thoughts behind all of this. So I knew that going into the interview, which was, I'm pretty sure that was actually maybe what pushed me over, because I'm like, look, any Republican can come out against Trump. That to me seems more like griftery, right? To use the popular
there's
lingo.
Nothing bold about that.
Correct. Yeah. But the Affordable Care Act really made me go like, man, I wonder if this guy just like really believed in the fucking Iraq War and believed in this. And so to me, it's like, I know that a ton of conservatives are going to listen to this interview I do with him. And a lot of them probably don't know that that happened with him so like, I really like having these interviews where I can get a conservative to say some like hella liberal stuff, and then their listeners go, oh, like he thinks that too. Do you know what I mean? Like, again, my goal is to convince people.
Well, you don't want to be, you don't want to be like a part of a circle jerk anymore. Is what it sounds like. And I don't want to do, I've never wanted to do that myself. This thing with Frum, I don't know if I want to throw him a bone about like, oh, maybe he didn't know what he was doing with the Iraq War. I mean, I honestly don't know. It's not fair for me to assume, but it sure seems like when you're sitting that close in, I will assume that you fucking knew the shit you were doing was horrible, and you were being dishonest. Yeah, you were being dishonest, and you totally fucked up. Nevertheless, it's a great example of how you could potentially lose an ally, if by ostracizing people, because he is a potential ally in the healthcare debate. Now, I don't know if I don't want to, say things that aren't true. I don't want to exaggerate. I don't believe he's not, it's not like he's an outspoken proponent for Medicare for all at the moment that I'm aware of. Right. But still, he certainly was an ally to make some progress on healthcare. And, we shouldn't be it's really not wise to be ostracizing people that could be potential allies, or completely ostracizing, at least completely ostracizing people when they could be potential allies in some area for progress.
Yeah, well, especially their base is what matters. You know, like he doesn't matter. He's just a fucking guy.
Great point. That's a really good point. Yeah,
but their base, like. People forget, and you know, I'm sure you got this when you were with the Bernie campaign, but like people forget that Trump won in a lot of districts that Obama won in. And so you can't just say like it's fucking racism. What you can say is that like we ran the wrong fucking candidate. And when Trump said, I'm going to drain the swamp, that was right. However, he was part of the swamp. That is what he left out. So the reason I bring that up is because there are a fucking ton of people in the middle of the country that can be won over by a Bernie Sanders, that can be won over, who follow David Frum on Twitter or who watch by Real Time with Bill Maher or whatever. And if we want to win, like those are the people we need. Do I want fucking Nazis and racists and sexists on my side? Fuck no. But there are a shitload of people who I mean, dude, most of the people I fucking do MMA with, they don't watch the news. They don't go on the internet. They just know shit's fucked up. Yeah. And they're like, well, I don't trust her. And like, that guy's kind of funny. Like, they're not hateful. Most of them are minorities.
You got like I don't know how this happened. I don't know, but somehow a string appeared on your beard. Like it just appeared.
Oh, I got it.
That was not there before the whole time. Don't worry, I would have told you.
My cat just like throws everything apart. See, I'm still a liberal feministy guy. I have a fucking cat.
We'll wrap this up with just kind of like tribalism in general is problematic, obviously. Yep. But I also want to ask you, but one thing I'm a little confused about is for your podcast, you brand it as no tribes, no bullshit.
Yeah.
But you still call yourself lefty liberal, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be dishonest for me to say like I'm in the middle. All of this, I've definitely gone a little more in the middle on like some issues. I think I'm still, you give me the checklist and I'm like pretty much all Bernie Sanders, right? But I think the difference is that I can see where the other side's coming from, and that is so rare that that's attracting conservatives to my show. So what I mean by that is like healthcare, for example, because we were talking about that. Back in the day, if you said you were against Medicare for all, I assume you want kids to die. I was like, you want kids to die. You want fucking old ladies to die, and you want kids to die. Now I realize that it's like, no. They just don't trust the government because the government fucks up everything. They don't want their kids to die. Their kids have decent health care. They're scared. Yeah. And I disagree with that. I disagree.
Yeah. But I mean, I agree. There's some truth to it, but it's an overgeneralization. Like you can't take
correct.
That government can fuck things up. That doesn't mean they always fuck things. Go ahead. Sorry.
But doesn't it make it easier to have a conversation and try to convince somebody about Medicare for all with someone who just wants their kids to be okay, as opposed to someone who's just some fucking, you assume it's just a selfish billionaire who wants kids not to have health care? So once that happens, then we can go, all right, how do we make sure the government doesn't fuck it up? Why does the government fuck it up? Is it because of some of the Republicans? Yeah. Is it because of corrupt Democrats who are still tied to the healthcare system? Yeah. Now we're fucking talking, right?
Yeah.
Now we're not playing tribalized politics. We're having a conversation. So what's cool is I have a ton of conservatives that listen to my show. What's cooler is the show is still fucking more left than a lot of lefty podcasts. So look, I'm not one to say anything good about myself, but for people who are like, he's kissing up to the right, I'm like, nah, man, I'm actually doing a lot more than most of you because I'm convincing people to come.
Yeah. That's very big.
Our side.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and that's really rare. And also, by the way, the ones who do disagree, just me living in a world knowing that like there are nice Republicans out there. It's a nicer fucking world to live in, man. Like I just go jitsu with people. I don't ask what fucking political party they're from. I just try to be nice. I help people. Like I said, we've gotten emails about kids who haven't committed suicide from because of this podcast. And I don't fucking know if that was a liberal who wrote in or a Republican. Like I've been through enough shit that I'm like, I just want to have conversations with nice people. And if you're a hateful asshole, like, you're not welcome on the show. But if you're willing to like hear out the other side, cool, you're welcome on the show.
I mean, it seems to me tribalism is growing because, well, one, it's more profitable. It's easier to circle jerk. Yep. It's easier on a number of levels. One, if you're never telling an audience that anything they think is wrong, and so they keep coming back. And then another thing is it's just easier. It's not, because you don't have to challenge yourself at all.
Yeah. When I was doing that, I literally spent all day having people tell me I was good and smart, and I'm like, this is fucking great. This is amazing.
Yeah. I'm curious though, but there are examples. I'm hopeful, and I'm curious what your opinion is. Because you do have examples like Joe Rogan. You do have examples of a lot of podcasts and YouTube channels that are that don't fit into these these tribes. What do you think? They don't to people who are paying attention, but Rogan is considered alt-right.
Like when articles are written about alt-right comedy, like Rogan's on there, and Rogan's had Abby Martin, and Rogan's had, fucking Bernie. But when I say tribalism, I don't mean like camaraderie is bad, or it's bad to hang out with some people who agree with you. What I mean is like when people call Joe Rogan alt-right, like that's the worst kind of tribalism, right? Is being like, you've had a right-wing
person. The reasonable person is a terrible person. Yeah. You're terrible because you're reasonable. I mean, that's when it goes too far, really.
And that's the crazy thing now is that, just like that Quillette comment, like if you associate with someone who disagrees, you are automatically at that person's level. Yeah. Like, so does me interviewing David Front, am I now a war criminal? Yeah. Like, no.
Yeah. You do not automatically endorse everything this person has ever done. We don't automatically endorse everything either of us has ever done just because we are having a Skype today.
No, the only thing I endorse is that hilarious Martin Luther King video that I made 10 years ago. Again, I think the left hates this kind of dialogue because I remember when I would hear it and they were like, what happened to the good old days when, a Republican and Democrat in Congress could go have a drink together? And it's like, I still don't like that. When Chuck Schumer, I talk about no tribalism, blah, blah, blah. When Chuck Schumer wrote that glowing tweet about Pete King, I was like, fuck that motherfucker. I did a whole podcast. Like, fuck them. Because that's an example of the worst of the left coming together with the worst of the right. They're friends because they're fucking all of us over. What I'm talking about is like your neighbor who you have a disagreement with, right? Or like me, like listening to being intellectual enough that I can listen to Sam Harris talk about something I disagree with and be like, I don't like that. And then I can hear him say something I agree with and be like, that was cool. We're losing the ability to do that. Like when I hear Rogan interview Ben Shapiro, I go, yep, still don't like Ben Shapiro. When I hear Rogan interview Jordan Peterson, I go, disagree with the trans stuff. I should probably make my bed. I like that he's trying to get young men to take personal responsibility. All done. Yeah. You're allowed to have multiple views. Like that should be okay.
Yeah. Well, Jamie Kilstein, I really could talk with you forever. You're such an interesting person. I've really enjoyed this. I hope you are successful with your podcast that tries to reach beyond tribes, and hope many others are. And good luck with everything.
Just for your audience, if you guys check out the podcast, Real Talk between us, it's lefty as hell. It's so left. And ever since, I feel like the last 2 months, the podcast has actually gotten its best because I'm just going back to just being funny. Where if Chuck Schumer's being a fucking dickhead, I'm going to make fun of him the whole episode. If Republicans are being insane about Chick-fil-A, like that was all yesterday's episode, was making fun of them. And I think when you just follow funny and you're kind of gut, but you're still willing to listen to other people, it's like that's when shit actually gets kind of good. But I got to start posting those on YouTube for you. Those are just on iTunes.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you, buddy.
Jamie Kilstein with the Jamie Kilstein Podcast.
Fuck you, Matt. You're making my cock fall off.
Man, great job, Matt.
He goes by the name Orf.
Wonderful job.
Let's call him Matto, because I don't want to butcher his name.
Matt Orfalea.
Matt Orfalea.
Matt Orfalea.
Subscribe to him.
Matt Orf.
Matt Orfalea.
Matt Orfalea.
Matt Orfalea.
Incredible.
Wow, somebody knows me.
Absolutely, baby. We watch your videos. We make them go viral.
I follow this guy on YouTube. You should too. His name is Matt Orfalea. Go to youtube.com/Orf, O-R-F.
On Twitter, it's at 0RF.